Hi guys, I'm Shmi. Hello, welcome back to the channel where, believe it or not, it is now the last day of part 2 of my GT Black Series tour here in the US. But the very exciting thing about that is that it's time to head home for a few car deliveries. And when I say a few, I think over the next 2 or 3 weeks, it's 5. 5 things are going to be arriving, some you know about, the likes of the Lotus Emira. It's going to be time for delivery of my Lotus Emira First Edition, the Zenvo from Denmark arriving at the museum for the first time. But there are a few others which might take you a little bit by surprise, which we need to talk about today. Now, being the last drive, we're going to run over the mileage on this part of the tour, the total so far, the plans for what's going to be happening with this car now when we drop it off later on at Cars USA for storage for the short term, before there will be more of the trip out here in the United States. But firstly, I need to go and get it cleaned up. It's really dirty. I want to park it. I say it's really dirty, but in the sunshine it doesn't really look it. But believe me, it's been raining a bit. There are all sorts of bits of mess all over it. In fact, have a look at the wing. Check this out. You can see it kind of needs a clean. That's, yeah, bit mucky. Anyway, we'll get it tidied up, talk all about the plans ahead, and basically say bye-bye, farewell to the GT Black Series again. How bizarre, but how epic it's been so far. Very quickly, 2 things that are being asked all the time about this car. The first of which I've probably bored you to death with so far, but come around towards the front. Some of you know exactly what this is about, but the questions are still coming up. The crack in the front windshield and why it hasn't been changed yet. Now, that unfortunately happened from a stone that pinged up when we were driving into Las Vegas. Couldn't manage to get it repaired in time to stop the crack expanding. Houston at Royalty did help me out, did a repair to it so it hasn't got any worse, but you can't just go and get one from here. You can't just get a left-hand drive one because these sensors in the glass are positioned to the passenger side. So a US windshield would have them on the other side, which wouldn't really work. I can't do that. That's not a long-term solution. You might think I could just buy one in the UK and send it out. That's also not particularly easy, because if I just go and buy a windshield and try and package it myself to send it here, it's going to get broken. That's not coming to the US without getting broken. So I'm hoping to find a connection, talking to some people already, because basically US dealers can't order the UK part number as a prevention, a block against grey imports. Sorry to have to explain it all again. Many of you have heard that enough times now. The other thing is, why did I bring this car for this tour in the US as opposed to, say, the McLaren Senna, the Ford GT, the SF90, or something else? And there are a few reasons. The first is just the overall reliability of the thing, the fact that there are Mercedes dealers everywhere, the fact that I know I can do tons of miles with it without really worrying. The second is the practicality. We've got a huge boot, trunk space, loads of stuff, works really well for the purpose. The third, it's a super personal car. The whole story behind this, having been in the video, etc. The fourth is actually to do with financing and that kind of thing. I own this car outright, so there's no bank that has to be watching over my shoulder when I do a big trip across to other continents. It means I can just kind of go where I want, do what I want with it. So a whole long list of reasons. Now, talking about luggage space, back here I've actually got the key in a little pouch to drop it off later on. That just seems to be the way to do it. Loads of stuff we can fit bags in. I've not packed this very efficiently, and a big thanks to those of you who have already picked up your GTBS Tour tee that we have for this particular adventure. These are t-shirts, hoodies, you name it, all in the Cheers by Shmi150 shop, cheers.shmi150.com. Pretty suitable for the nature of the adventure we are on, if I can say so myself. So grab one of those while you still can, because there will be plenty more of this journey to come. We're actually going to be catching a flight later on, which means all of this is going to be coming out. This collection of stickers is growing. The stickers from the Yas track day, from STD at Donington Park, that was from the Dubai Autodrome, from Chin track days at Kota, parking passes at the F1, the shipping slip, that was from when I visited Whistle and Diesel, stopped by Cody's place, but still plenty more to come on this tour ahead of us. But for now, it's going to be a case of getting this over, going to get it washed up. So I suppose we could say the last ride, the last 30 miles here. And I want to talk about the mileage that I've done, because this part's actually been probably less than I expected. And then when it's cleaned up, the final stretch over towards Cars to say goodbye to it and tell you a bit more about what's awaiting at home. A little change of plans. Before we go to the car wash, we're going to head somewhere else. But firstly, start this up. Oh, so good. Well, given it's the last day, we're going to head around the corner to a Chick-Fil-A. We don't get them at home, going to make the most of it. This is another thing I've talked about a few times. When you've started the car, it always says traffic sign assist inoperative. That is because the aforementioned sensors and cameras and things up here that read the road signs cannot read US road signs. The car knows that it's out of region. And talking about being out of region, how cool is it? And I'm sorry to say it again, that this is my car from home that's here in California. that's here in the LA sunshine. There are palm trees over there. Never would it have made sense before when I took delivery that this car might be somewhere like this. And in fact, I brought my Ford GT to exactly these roads. I had it exactly around here 3.5 years ago. Time absolutely flies by. We swing out here, yes, off we go. Not exactly the longest of first legs today, but there's something so special about this. And yes, you could rent a car on another continent, that kind of thing. But when it's for this many miles, and we'll dive more into that shortly, for this length of time, it's so much better to just bring your own. It's cheaper to bring your own, it's cooler to bring your own, and there's a system in the US that if you're visiting, you can bring a car for 12 months. You can't do it indefinitely. You can't just buy a car in Europe and bring it here, shorter than the 25-year rule that the US has. But if you're a foreigner visiting, they have this opportunity, and I mean, look at it. It's such a talking point. It's so much fun. But yeah, let's get around the corner, get a quick bite to eat, and then continue. That was not exactly the longest drive in the world. We are literally pulling up just here to Chick-Fil-A. That was about 1/3 of a mile. I want to run through more of the mileage things, but this is where you have to watch out so much, especially in California. These massive dips in and out of driveways that are super difficult to work around. This is looking pretty busy, I'm not gonna lie. Hopefully there's somewhere we can park. I think I can squeeze around here. Yeah, I'm gonna squeeze around this way and go through there to find a parking spot. I can see some right up at the front. Perfect. We can squeeze in here somewhere and then go and grab ourselves some lunch. I'm very excited to tell you about all of the plans and cars that are awaiting back at home. A quick Chick-fil-A demolished, a G-Wagon right in front of us, as always, but we're heading onto the highway to head a little bit north, only, again, like a mile or two, to a car wash for now. Last bit of enjoying of this, I've left the tank really low. As you can see, we're under a quarter. In case for some reason it needs to be shipped home, it needs to have an empty tank, and this is 101 octane that we put in it. There's a 101 place near here, which is crazy. It's like 105 RON in Europe. So that should be fine for when we get back here. We've got about 30 miles to drive. That's going to be absolutely spot on, to be honest. Well, this is now beautiful, shiny, clean, as it should be. But let's talk mileage for a moment. On the car, at this specific moment in time, we have 12,730 miles. It was on 11,377 when we picked it up. It's going to be on about 1,400 miles more from this part of the tour, which means 7,200 miles in the USA. More than half this car's life has been here driving it in the United States, which is crazy. In fact, it's going to be 2/3 of this car's life by the end. But I tell you what, it just soaks up the miles so well, whether it's driving at Circuit of the Americas or Tail of the Dragon in Tennessee, or I had hoped, and I talked about this earlier, to drive up Pacific Coast Highway to be in San Francisco, but plans kind of fell apart a bit. So when we left Vegas, we drove through Death Valley here to LA to Southern California as opposed to up to Northern California. It'd be great to get an opportunity to go to San Francisco, but I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to make that work with the current plans, with the current schedule. So it might have to be that we just start our journey back basically across the south towards Florida is kind of the plan with it all for the next part of the tour. But yeah, another 1,400 miles. It did about, I want to say 3,000 miles in the Middle East. Was it 2,500 miles in the Middle East? And the rest mostly around Germany and Europe. Very little in the UK. Probably only 1,000 miles of this car's total life has been in its home country, which is quite funny when you think about it. Anyway, clean and tidied, ready now for the last little bit of driving, the last 30 miles or so over towards cars, to tell you more about what we're going home to see. Another thing that's kind of relevant, driving quite so many miles in this car, is the service interval, the service schedule. Now, technically, it had its last service just before it left the UK. So about 5,250 miles, which means that the next one isn't due for 12 months or 10,000 miles. But I think in reality, the logical move for me to make is to get this car serviced probably when I'm next here, because I'd like to be out here for it to be done. I just feel more comfortable if I'm kind of aware of everything and on top of everything. So it will need an early service, if we can say, oil change service, quick check over. I've tried to have regular looks at the car to make sure everything is as it should be. Obviously we had new tires what, 2,500 miles ago? Something like that, when the Cup 2Rs were finished and we swapped them to the Cup 2s at Envision in Salt Lake in Utah. That feels like a very long time ago. This part of the adventure was to go back to Strads, collect the car, having been in Miami for the Storato launch before, collect it, drive back to Vegas, and then drive here to Los Angeles. But plain sailing ahead of us, I think. Bit of a cruise up these roads, which, as I've talked about on a few videos, are so appalling here. And I don't really know why that is. Might be to do with just trying to discourage driving in general. But the roads are very busy and the road quality is horrendous. How am I gonna get across to the left lanes? I'm kind of stuck alongside a wall of cars. We'll figure a way. We will figure a way. There we go. Sliding on through, or not. It's mayhem driving here. You're just gonna watch out in every possible direction what's happening around you, but off we go. We're in the last, well, half a mile now. That's kind of flown by, the last half a mile of this part of the adventure, which is really crazy to think about. It feels kind of, in some ways, like it's the end, because of course, it's the end of 2022. It's the end of over 7,000 miles driving across the country in the GT Black Series, which is so much if you think about it, for this kind of car. Most of these won't drive that many miles in their lifetimes, let alone in what has effectively been 6 weeks of a tour, taking in, oh, bump, bump, yeah, that's a bit of road we do not want to be driving through, not so friendly, oh gosh. This car's generally quite good in terms of the ride, but certainly you need to watch out. I've definitely scraped the front a few times, which definitely makes me wince every time, but it is kind of what it is. We're actually down onto the fuel light, I've just noticed. The fuel light's popped on. No issue, but hey, just something to note. But yeah, it's done a wonderful job of it. So we're going to drop it off. Hopefully I can find somewhere to pull over for a moment and I can finally run over what's happening, because I'm struggling to get my own head around it. Oh, we just scraped the ground there. Great. Alrighty, in we go. We've arrived. Let's go park somewhere. That is the end of this part of the tour, a temporary hiatus over Christmas and the New Year, with this car now being stored here in the warehouse with cars. And one of the really fun things about this is that at this time last year, the GT Black Series was stored in Cars Warehouse in the UK before it went out to Dubai. When it got there, and a few times earlier in the year, it was being stored at Cars Warehouse at the Dubai Autodrome in the UAE, and now it's here at their warehouse in California. 3 different continents. The beauty of that and the service they offer when it comes to shipping and transport is having all of these different locations to simplify the entire process, so the car is technically ready. If for some reason I decide to send it back to the UK, it's all completely set for that purpose, but it's equally ready if we come back out here to be transported to another location if I need, or to just be ready to click the button, go, to turn up here and to drive it away into, well, the sunset coming shortly now. But this is only a brief pause, and it's a very exciting pause for reasons I need to explain about what's coming next back at home. Now, some of the things you already know about. Of course, I went out to Hethel, to the home of Lotus, to the Chapman Production Center to see my upcoming Emira First Edition. That is now just about ready for delivery. Still a little bit more to do with the paperwork and going to get it and having the right plate on the car. It's all an online process. It's quite unique and innovative, really, but it's definitely a bit complicated as well. So hopefully, as soon as I get back, that's going to be ready. There's a certain purple 1,360 horsepower car that's been waiting in Denmark, and I mentioned this prior to coming out to the USA. The car effectively went back to the factory in early September after the Supercar Owners Circle event in Croatia. It was ready about 2 or 3 weeks later, but I haven't been home since then. I was in the US for the full trip across the country with this, went to the Middle East to go and do Gumball 3000 and a few other things out there, then have been back in the US for plenty more, from Miami back over towards California. I've only had like 2 days at home in the interim period, so I haven't been able to go to Denmark, which is a very strange, let's say, problem. It's not a problem, obviously, so the car is waiting, and as soon as I can get there, I can go pick it up, and that could be quite soon. But that's only 2 of the 5. There's something that's going to be delivered, I think just literally in the next day or 2, probably, that I can't tell you too much about, other than the fact that it's going to be a complete surprise and one of the coolest things ever that's been at the Schmuseum. For many reasons. If you know me and you know the things I like, which you've seen on the Schmuseum vlogs, for example, that's going to make a lot more sense. So that's number 3. Number 4 is going to be a return of something that you also won't be expecting. I'm going to leave it at that. Number 5 is another project thing. I'm saying too much. I'm saying too much for now. I'm going to keep some suspense around all of this, but I'm very much looking forward to getting back and to being able to share what's going to be a tremendously exciting couple of weeks ahead. The next 2 or 3 weeks are going to be amazing. For now though, obviously we need to get all of our luggage out of this car. It's taken a little bit of a beating the more I look around it. There are some small marks here and there, and for example, check over here, the PPF. PPF saves the day often. You can see these little marks. These are nicks in the film. Obviously not ideal, but if you didn't have protection film, you know, like the full Topaz PPF on this, that would have gone through paint for sure. Whereas when I do get it home, we can peel off the whole film off the whole of the front, redo it, and it will look exactly as new. And you have to think that this car has done, well, nearly 13,000 miles now, and it's still immaculate. The paintwork that Chartwell did on this, all of the masking, all of the shapes, you know, leaving the exposed carbon, doing the full solar beam, is unbelievable. It's so good. It looks so, so, so nice. So yeah, the only thing that would be the icing on the cake is to have a new windscreen. But as I've explained, that's a little bit of a complicated one. It'll fly on me for another day. We'll see how that goes. And when I'm back out here, it'll be time to get it serviced. So for now, we need to pop it away. We need to pop it away and prepare for very exciting things to come. Next plans, where this car is going to go when the tour continues, from here all the way across to Florida. The plan at the moment is to go from Los Angeles, potentially via San Diego, past Palm Springs, across to Arizona. Some big events happen out in Arizona in January, then to continue all the way through Texas, Houston, Dallas, onwards I think back through Tennessee, Atlanta, Georgia, and down via Orlando into Miami to wrap up, let's say part 3. But part 3 probably won't be the end because it's easier to ship the car home from the Northeast. I think there should be a part 4 up the East Coast, maybe curving in via Chicago and a few other locations. So many things to do, and while the car's out here, I want to make the most of it. I want to enjoy it to the fullest and be able to share the coolest stuff with you guys, because we're having so much fun traveling around, meeting so many people, shooting with so many people, filming so many cars, collections, events, amazing roads and all sorts, and just driving this car. As I said earlier, it was built to be driven. So many of these cars do so few miles, but when it's like this, you just want to enjoy it. And I tell you what, even with all of the upgrades from Opus, everything's holding up perfectly. It's really doing a very, very good job. Also at home is going to be some updates to the Schmuseum, the office build, which you might have seen over on the Schmuseum channel. So that's very exciting as well. And of course, do not forget our new design for this tour that we have. Back here, we need to empty out all of the luggage, of course, but you can check these out at the Cheers by Shmi on 50 shop. GTBS Tour Tee. Big thanks to those of you who have picked one of those up. So before I go and do this, there's definitely going to be some paperwork and things just to sort out quickly, but it's been absolutely amazing out here to continue the GT Black Series tour. So cool, so much fun. So thank you very much for joining the adventure, guys. I appreciate your support an awful lot, and stay tuned for plenty more and some very exciting things over the next couple of weeks. I'll see you then. Cheers.